This story is titled, When I Discovered My Fiancé Had Taken Out Loans in My Name, I Called Off Our Wedding, but later she asked me to pay for her new wedding with my best friend. Hey Reddit, my name is Tyler and I'm 29 years old. I work as a graphic designer at a mid-sized firm here in San Diego. It's nothing super prestigious, but I make decent money and I've always been pretty responsible with it. Growing up with a single mom who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table taught me early on not to take financial stability for granted. That upbringing shaped how I view money. Every dollar matters, and you don't spend what you don't have. This story is about my ex-girlfriend, who I'll call Madison. She's 28, and we were together for 5 long years, living together for most of that time. I need to warn you right now. Buckle up, because this story gets absolutely wild in ways I never could have imagined when we first met. Madison and I first crossed paths at a mutual friend's housewarming party about 5.5 years ago. The moment I saw her, I was completely captivated. She was absolutely stunning. A brunette with an athletic build who always looked perfectly put together, like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. But it wasn't just her looks that drew people in. Madison had this magnetic personality that made everyone in the room want to be around her. She was the type of person who could light up a room just by walking into it. I still remember thinking she was completely out of my league when she first started talking to me that night. Here I was, just a regular guy who spent his days designing marketing materials and websites. And here was this gorgeous woman who seemed to have everything going for her. But somehow, our conversation that night flowed effortlessly. We talked about everything: our careers, our dreams of traveling the world, our favorite books, our family backgrounds. She was incredibly smart, genuinely funny, and seemed authentically interested in what I had to say. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers and I was already completely smitten. Our first official date was at this charming little French restaurant that she'd been wanting to try. I remember being nervous about the prices when I looked up the menu beforehand. It was definitely more expensive than my usual dining spots. But I figured it was worth splurging to make a good first impression on someone I was already falling for. Looking back now, that moment should have been my first red flag. But when you're infatuated with someone, you tend to overlook these warning signs. When we arrived at the restaurant, Madison immediately ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without even glancing at the price. She did it with such casual confidence, like money was no object at all. At the time, I found her confidence attractive and assumed she was just someone who appreciated the finer things in life. When you're head over heels for someone, you convince yourself that these little things don't matter. The truth is, we clicked on so many levels that I easily convinced myself the money stuff was irrelevant. She was just used to a certain lifestyle, I told myself. After all, she was the daughter of a successful real estate agent and a corporate lawyer. She'd grown up with much more financial comfort than I had ever known. It made sense that she'd have different spending habits than someone who grew up watching their mom count every penny. When we met, Madison worked as a marketing specialist at a boutique agency, and her job sounded incredibly impressive when she described it. She was constantly meeting with clients, developing comprehensive brand strategies, and coordinating elaborate photo shoots. She was ambitious and outgoing, always talking about her goals and dreams. One thing that particularly stood out about her was how much she talked about building her personal brand. It seemed like everything she did was somehow connected to this larger vision she had for herself. About 6 months into our relationship, Madison started getting serious about becoming a lifestyle influencer. "It's the future of marketing, Tyler," she would tell me with genuine excitement in her eyes. "I'm building valuable skills that any company would kill for. This isn't just posting pretty pictures. It's about understanding social media algorithms, building authentic engagement, and creating content that resonates with target demographics." At the time she started this journey, she had maybe 800 followers on Instagram. Not much by influencer standards, but she was absolutely obsessed with growing that number. She would spend hours every day researching the perfect hashtags, meticulously planning photo shoots around our apartment and various locations around San Diego, editing pictures until they looked flawless, and engaging with other accounts in her niche. I genuinely thought it was great that she had found something she was so passionate about. It was inspiring to see someone so dedicated to building something from the ground up. Madison would get incredibly excited whenever she gained even 100 new followers. Her face would light up like she'd just won the lottery, and she'd immediately start analyzing what content had driven the growth. When small brands started sending her free products, usually makeup samples or clothing items worth maybe $20 or $30, she acted like she'd just landed a major corporate sponsorship deal. "This is just the beginning, Tyler," she would say, her eyes absolutely shining with possibility. "Pretty soon the big brands will notice me and start reaching out. And then we're talking serious sponsorship money, like people are making six figures doing this exact thing. I just need to be patient and keep building my audience." At the time, I had no idea that this passion project would essentially become a full-time job that I would unknowingly end up funding entirely. Back then, I was just proud of her dedication and initiative. I wanted to be the supportive boyfriend who believed in her dreams and encouraged her to pursue her goals, even if I didn't fully understand the influencer world myself. Madison moved in with me after we'd been together for about a year. We found a place together that was slightly nicer and more expensive than my previous apartment, but she convinced me it would be perfect for her content creation needs. "Tyler, you have to see how amazing the natural light is in that living room," she explained enthusiastically as we toured the space. "And that exposed brick wall in the bedroom will make the perfect backdrop for outfit photos and lifestyle content. This apartment will basically pay for itself once my follower count grows." Things seemed good at first. Madison did contribute to the rent, though it was always a bit less than half since she made less money than I did. She would occasionally buy groceries and household items, and she seemed genuinely appreciative of our shared living situation. But as the months went by, I started noticing that her financial contributions were getting smaller and smaller, while somehow her personal expenses seemed to be growing larger and larger. "Babe, I really need to focus on growing my brand right now," she would explain whenever I brought up the shifting financial dynamics. "This is an investment in our future together. Once I hit 45,000 followers, that's when the big brand deals really start coming in, and then we'll be completely set. I just need you to trust the process and support me through this growth phase." I believed her completely. I really, truly did. I wanted to be the supportive partner who understood that sometimes you have to invest in your dreams before you see the returns. So I would come home after working 10-hour days at the design firm, only to find Madison staging elaborate photo shoots throughout our apartment, planning detailed content calendars weeks in advance, or deep in research about hashtag strategies and engagement techniques. She was working hard in her own way, I convinced myself. It just looked different from traditional work. When Madison needed a new camera to stay competitive with other influencers in her space, I stepped up to help her. The equipment cost $1,350 for a high-quality DSLR camera, plus the essential lenses, which was honestly a lot of money for me at the time. But she made such a compelling case about how professional-grade equipment would elevate the quality of her content and help her stand out in an increasingly crowded market. "Tyler, you can immediately tell the difference between phone photos and real camera shots," she explained while showing me examples from successful influencers. "This investment will pay for itself within months once brands see how professional my content looks." When she needed new outfits because, as she constantly reminded me, "You can't post wearing the same thing twice. People notice that stuff and it kills your credibility," I covered those expenses too. When she needed to attend influencer networking events and those trendy brunch meetups where content creators supposedly made important connections, I paid for those as well. Everything was always framed as an investment that would pay off soon. Just a few more followers, just one more big opportunity, and everything would change for us financially. At first, these expenses were occasional, maybe a few $100s here and there every month or two. I could handle that, and it felt good to support someone I loved in pursuing their dreams. But gradually, I started noticing that both the frequency and the amounts were increasing significantly. What started as a $180 handbag for content shoots became a $450 handbag, which then became a $100 handbag, because this is the exact one all the top influencers in my niche are carrying this season, and I need to look like I belong in their circle. Every single purchase came with a detailed justification that always sounded reasonable in the moment. "This is an investment in our brand, Tyler. We need to look the part if we want to be taken seriously in this industry. You know what they say, fake it till you make it. This will literally pay for itself with just one good sponsorship deal." Madison had become incredibly skilled at presenting each expense as a strategic business decision rather than just another luxury purchase. And to be fair, she did occasionally get small collaborations that seemed to validate the strategy. A trendy new restaurant would comp our meal in exchange for her posting about the experience on her Instagram stories. She'd receive a $40 payment to feature some skincare product that a small startup was trying to promote. Once, a boutique hotel even comped a night stay during a weekend getaway, though we still ended up paying for all the extras like room service, spa treatments, and valet parking, which definitely weren't cheap. These small wins were just enough to keep the dream alive and convince both of us that a major breakthrough was always just around the corner. Madison would celebrate each collaboration like it was proof that her strategy was working perfectly. "See, I told you this would start paying off," she'd say, after landing a free dinner or a small payment. "This is just the beginning. Once brands see my engagement rates and content quality, the real deals will start rolling in." Over time, our financial dynamics shifted so dramatically that I barely recognized how we'd gotten to where we were. When we first moved in together, we split expenses roughly 65-35, with me covering the larger share since I had the higher income. That seemed fair and reasonable to both of us. About a year later, our split had shifted to something more like 80-20. By our third year together, I was covering nearly everything: rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, plus all of Madison's business expenses for her influencer career. I watched my savings account steadily dwindle, while my credit card balances grew month after month. But every time I tried to have a serious conversation about our financial situation, Madison would become defensive or emotional. "You don't believe in me," she'd say, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're trying to crush my dreams just when I'm starting to gain momentum." Sometimes she'd add, "If I were a man pursuing my career, you wouldn't question these investments." Her father had apparently always told her that you have to spend money to make money, and she'd throw that piece of wisdom at me whenever I expressed concern about our mounting expenses. But the line that always got to me, the one that would immediately shut down any financial discussion, was when she'd look at me with hurt in her eyes and say, "I thought you loved me and wanted me to be happy." How do you argue with that? How do you explain that love and financial responsibility aren't mutually exclusive without sounding like a heartless monster? Looking back now, I can see that I was a complete fool. But when you're in the middle of that situation, you don't see it clearly at all. You keep making excuses for behavior that should be obvious red flags. You keep hoping things will change, believing in the potential of what could be, rather than accepting the reality of what actually is. I was working 55-hour weeks while Madison was getting regular facials and posting about her hustle and entrepreneur mindset. But somehow I'd convinced myself this was what a real partnership looked like. I remember one particular night about 2 years into living together, lying awake at 3:30 a.m. staring at the ceiling. I was doing mental math, trying to calculate how long it would realistically take me to pay off the credit card debt that had accumulated from funding Madison's influencer dreams. The numbers were genuinely scary. Madison was sleeping peacefully beside me, wearing her expensive silk eye mask, a necessary purchase for maintaining proper beauty rest for her content creation, as she'd explained when the $85 charge appeared on my credit card statement. In that moment of clarity at 3:30 in the morning, I found myself wondering what the hell I was doing with my life. How had I gotten to this point where I was lying awake worried about debt while my girlfriend slept soundly next to me, completely unburdened by the financial stress that was keeping me up at night? But by the time morning came around, I'd managed to push those doubts away again. I loved her. We were building something together. And it would all be worth it eventually. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. Fast forward to about 20 months ago, and Madison had grown her Instagram following to around 23,000 followers. It was definitely respectable and showed real growth from where she'd started, but it was still nowhere near the level where serious money typically starts coming in. She had managed to secure a few regular brand partnerships that sent her free products, mostly makeup, skincare items, and the occasional clothing piece. She'd also occasionally get paid a couple $100s for sponsored posts. But these small payments barely covered even a fraction of her monthly expenses related to content creation. By this point, I was covering about 90% of our living costs. Plus, I was funding her influencer career to the tune of thousands of dollars every month. My credit cards were completely maxed out. I had dipped into my emergency fund multiple times, each time telling myself it was just temporary until her big break came. I'd even taken out a personal loan to consolidate some of the mounting debt, convincing myself that it was just a short-term solution until Madison's sponsorship income started flowing in consistently. I was stressed about money constantly, but I tried my best not to show it because I knew that whenever I brought up our financial situation, we'd end up in a massive fight. I'd inevitably be cast as the unsupportive villain who didn't understand how the influencer industry works, who was trying to sabotage her dreams just when she was on the verge of making it big. Then Madison started talking about this incredible networking opportunity in Nevada, some kind of influencer retreat that could supposedly take her career to the next level. The retreat itself cost $1,650, which naturally went straight onto my already maxed credit card. But that was just the beginning. She'd be gone for 2 weeks, and of course, she needed a completely new wardrobe for the event. Content creation is everything, Tyler, she explained as she scrolled through online boutiques, adding items to various shopping carts. You just don't understand how this industry works. I can't show up to network with successful influencers wearing the same outfits I've already posted. People will notice, and it'll make me look unprofessional and unsuccessful. This retreat could literally change our entire future. I was already paying for about 85% of our living expenses by that point. But somehow I found myself putting another $1,350 on my credit card for her new clothes and accessories for this trip. She promised, like she always did, that she'd pay me back from the brand deals that would definitely come from this networking retreat. I remember actually believing that this might finally be the turning point we'd been waiting for. Maybe this really was the big opportunity she needed to break through to the next level. All the major influencers will be there, she explained excitedly as she carefully packed her new outfits, meticulously removing and preserving the tags on some items. I later realized she was planning to return them after using them for photo shoots. The connections I make at this retreat could literally change our lives, Tyler. Just think. This time next year, we could be the ones hosting events like this instead of just attending them. The night before she left for Nevada, we went out for a nice dinner at one of her favorite upscale restaurants. Naturally, it was my treat. That had become such an automatic assumption that she didn't even pretend to reach for her wallet anymore. Throughout the meal, Madison seemed different somehow. She was distracted, constantly checking her phone and responding to messages, but she was also oddly affectionate toward me in a way that felt almost out of character. She kept telling me how much she appreciated everything I'd done for her over the years, how she couldn't have gotten this far in her influencer journey without my support and belief in her vision. Tyler, I know I don't say this enough, but you've been incredible, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Not every guy would be willing to invest in their girlfriend's dreams the way you have. I'm so lucky to have someone who believes in me, even when I don't believe in myself. At the time, her words felt really nice to hear. It had been months since she'd acknowledged my financial contributions or expressed genuine gratitude for the sacrifices I'd been making. But looking back now, her behavior that night feels more like she was saying goodbye, like she was already mentally preparing to leave but wanted to ease her guilt by acknowledging what I'd done for her. The first week of the retreat, Madison called me every single day, and she was absolutely gushing about the connections she was making. She was particularly excited about this amazing mentor she'd met named Blake, a 42-year-old influencer with 3.8 million followers who apparently had connections throughout the entire industry. According to Madison, Blake was incredibly impressed with her content strategy and growth potential. He's worked with literally all the major brands, Tyler, she told me during one of our daily calls, her voice bubbling with excitement. Nike, Sephora, Fashion Nova, all of them. And he thinks I have massive potential that's just been waiting for the right guidance. He's introducing me to everyone who matters at this retreat. She'd send me pictures throughout the day. Beautiful oceanfront venues where networking sessions were being held. Group shots with other influencers who all looked like they'd stepped out of magazine spreads. Elaborate meals at restaurants that she described as networking opportunities. During the second week, I noticed that our calls were getting shorter and less frequent. Madison was apparently so busy networking and working on some major opportunity with Blake that she could hardly find time to talk to her boyfriend back home. When we did manage to speak, she seemed distracted and almost annoyed at having to check in with me. "I'm just so busy here, babe," she'd say, and I could hear other voices and laughter in the background. Blake is introducing me to so many important people, and there are all these exclusive events happening every night. This is exactly the kind of intensive networking I needed to take my brand to the next level. Then, 3 days before she was supposed to come home, I received a text message. Not even a phone call, just a text. After 5 years together, this is how she chose to end our relationship. Tyler, I don't know how to say this, but I found my true path out here. The energy in Nevada just resonates with my authentic self in a way that San Diego never could. Blake has offered to help me take my brand to the next level, and I'm going to stay here with him while I get established in this new phase of my career. I think we both know our relationship has run its course. You're too focused on traditional success and financial security, and I need someone who understands my vision and supports my unconventional path. I'll arrange to get my things sometime next week. I'm sorry it had to end this way, but this is what's best for both of us. I truly wish you the best. I was completely blindsided. 5 years of my life ended with a cold, impersonal text message. I immediately called her back, but it went straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I tried sending emails, but they went unanswered. I even posted comments on her Instagram asking her to call me, but those comments were deleted within minutes, and I found myself blocked from her account entirely. In a state of shock and disbelief, I decided to check our joint credit card account, which I rarely monitored closely because, frankly, seeing the charges would just depress me, and I trusted Madison to use it responsibly. What I found made my stomach drop. There were several charges from the past 2 weeks at high-end restaurants, luxury boutiques, and expensive hotels, places that were way fancier than anything she'd described to me in our phone calls. These weren't the venues for a professional influencer retreat. One charge that particularly caught my attention was from a restaurant literally called Lover's Point, a romantic beachfront dining spot that was clearly designed for couples, not business networking. The pieces started falling into place, and I realized that her networking with Blake had been going incredibly well, just not in the professional sense she'd been describing to me. I spent the next several days in a complete daze, alternating between numbness, pure fury, and heartbreak. The emotional whiplash was incredible. One moment I'd feel nothing at all, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart, and the next moment I'd be consumed with rage or dissolved in tears. How could someone I'd supported financially and emotionally for years, someone I thought I was building a future with, discard me so easily and coldly? I called in sick to work for 3 days straight, barely managed to eat anything, and couldn't sleep for more than an hour or two at a time. About a week later, while I was finally back at the office trying to drag myself through a normal workday, Madison came to collect her belongings. She had the audacity to bring Blake and another friend to help her pack, and they cleared out her stuff while I wasn't there to witness it or say anything. When I got home that evening, I found her key sitting on the kitchen counter next to a handwritten note that basically said, "Sorry it didn't work out, but this is for the best for both of us." And then, in a move that perfectly encapsulated her selfishness, she added a postscript. P.S. I took the coffee machine since I used it more. But she didn't just take the coffee machine. As I walked through our apartment that evening, I realized she had systematically taken our framed art prints that I had paid for, the good towels we'd bought together, half of our kitchen gadgets, the robot vacuum that had been a household purchase, the iPad I'd gotten her for her birthday the previous year, and a bunch of other household items that we'd accumulated during our time together. What really struck me was how calculating she'd been about the whole thing. She didn't just grab items randomly or take things based on sentimental value. She had carefully selected the valuable stuff while leaving behind the worn-out or inexpensive items. It wasn't about what she needed or what held memories for her. It was clearly about what had resale value or luxury appeal. The apartment felt empty and gutted, much like I felt emotionally. But the financial insult to injury came when I discovered that she'd left behind approximately $3,200 in unpaid credit card debt on cards where she was an authorized user. So not only had she drained my finances for years and then abandoned me for someone else, but she'd also stuck me with her final bills as a parting gift. As I looked around at what she'd taken versus what she'd left behind, my shock started transforming into anger. The more I thought about her systematic selection of valuable items and her casual abandonment of financial responsibility, the angrier I became. I'm honestly embarrassed to admit this, but I didn't get out of bed for 3 straight days after fully processing what she'd taken and the debt she'd left me with. My buddy Connor practically had to drag me to the gym after a week of what he called my pathetic moping. You need endorphins, man. And you need a purpose that isn't checking her Instagram every 5 minutes to see if she's posted about her new life, he told me bluntly. This wallowing isn't helping anyone, especially not you. He was absolutely right. I started going to therapy, which helped me process the situation more than I had expected it would. I threw myself into work with renewed focus and energy, and ironically, I ended up landing a major design project for a social media company that was opening a new San Diego office. The project was significant enough that it led to a promotion and a substantial salary increase. Slowly but surely, I started rebuilding both my life and my bank account, both of which Madison had effectively drained over the course of our relationship. I canceled her status as an authorized user on all my credit card accounts, froze my credit reports, and set up alerts for any new inquiries or attempts to open cards in my name. When my lease was up, I moved to a smaller, much cheaper apartment that I could easily afford on my own. I sold a bunch of stuff I didn't really need, took on freelance design work on weekends to boost my income, and lived on an incredibly strict budget for months. I'm talking about eating ramen noodles, rice and beans, and other cheap staples more often than I'd like to admit. But gradually, the debt started decreasing and my emergency fund began to rebuild. More importantly, I started to feel like myself again, or rather, a new and improved version of myself. I was more cautious about relationships and money, but I was also more self-aware and confident in my own worth. Through Connor, I met an amazing woman named Jessica at a charity run for children's cancer research about 4 months ago. She's a pediatric nurse who's smart as hell, genuinely funny, and here's the crazy part, she actually pays for her own stuff when we go out together. I know that sounds like it should be basic human decency, but after 5 years with Madison, it felt like a revolutionary concept. On our third date, Jessica actually insisted on paying for dinner. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I almost teared up right there at the table. It felt so incredibly good to be with someone who didn't automatically see me as an ATM or expect me to fund every aspect of our time together. She has her own life, her own successful career, her own group of friends, and her own financial independence. She doesn't need me to build her brand or fund her dreams because her dream is helping sick children get better. And she's already living that dream every single day without needing to post about it for likes and validation. Things have been going really well with Jessica. The relationship feels refreshing and healthy in ways I didn't even realize I'd been missing. She's got genuine substance and purpose beyond social media metrics and brand partnerships. It's been an incredible experience to be with someone who values actual partnership over financial dependency. I was finally feeling like myself again after many months of hard work and healing. My credit score was climbing back from the grave where Madison had buried it. I had actual money in my savings account again instead of just mounting debt. I'd even started allowing myself to dream about the future. Maybe buying a house someday, maybe even marriage to someone who actually understood what partnership means and who valued mutual respect and shared responsibility. Then, last Wednesday, my phone started buzzing with notifications from an unknown number. I generally don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, but this one kept calling back repeatedly, so I figured it might be something important. When I finally answered, I received what was quite possibly the most absolutely batshit crazy text message I've ever received in my entire life. Tyler, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I wanted to share my amazing news with you. Blake and I are getting married next month. As I've been planning our special day, I've been reflecting on my journey and all the people who have been part of it. The truth is, you owe me for the years I spent with you. Those were years I could have been building my life with Blake instead. I gave you my youth and emotional support when you were nobody special. I helped shape you into the successful man you are today. So, as a gesture of goodwill and to settle this debt of time and energy that you owe me, I'd like you to contribute $1,600 toward our wedding at the Grand Paradise Resort. It's really the fair thing to do considering all that I invested in you over the years. The venue requires the final payment by next week, so please Venmo me ASAP. Thanks for understanding. I literally spat out my coffee while reading this message. I must have read it 10 times, trying to make sense of the pure, unadulterated entitlement. Was this some kind of elaborate joke? Was she seriously asking me for $1,600 for the privilege of having dated her? After she had already drained my bank accounts and credit cards for years, left me with thousands in debt, and abandoned me for another man she met while I was paying for her networking retreat? My first instinct was to tell her to go jump off the nearest cliff. My second, much better instinct was to be strategic about this situation and really think through my response carefully. Madison, congratulations on your engagement, I replied, keeping my tone as neutral and professional as possible. That's certainly an interesting way to look at our past relationship. Let me review my records and get back to you on this request. Then I got to work, and I mean I really got to work. What Madison didn't know, or had simply chosen to forget, was that I'm an incredibly detail-oriented person who tracks absolutely everything when it comes to finances. I mean everything. Ever since I was a kid watching my mom struggle to make ends meet and carefully manage every single bill, I've been meticulous about keeping records. When I was 12 years old, I started keeping track of my allowance and odd job money in a little notebook, organizing it into different categories like candy, video games, and savings. This habit evolved into comprehensive digital tracking as I became an adult. After Madison left me, I had gone through the painful but necessary process of documenting all of our shared finances. I did this partly for tax purposes, partly to understand just how bad the financial damage really was, and partly as a form of therapy to help me process what had happened. Facing the cold, hard reality of what this relationship had cost me in black and white numbers was brutal, but it was also essential for my recovery. I use a budgeting app called YNAB, You Need a Budget, for tracking all my expenses, and I had years of meticulously categorized data. I'd also kept every single receipt for major purchases organized in Google Drive by date and category. Yeah, I'm definitely that guy who keeps every receipt and warranty document, and my friends constantly tease me about it. But guess who they come to when they need to find a warranty for something they bought 3 years ago? When I first compiled all this financial information after Madison left, it was mainly for my own understanding and emotional recovery. I needed to see exactly where I stood financially so I could create a realistic plan for getting back on my feet. The process was incredibly painful but absolutely necessary, like lancing a boil to prevent infection. Seeing the numbers laid out in black and white helped me move from abstract feelings of betrayal and confusion to concrete, quantifiable reality. This wasn't just emotional damage. It was measurable financial abuse. And now, ironically, this same attention to detail that Madison had often mocked me for, "You're so boring with your spreadsheets, Tyler," was about to come in very handy. After receiving her outrageous text demanding $1,600 for her wedding, I stayed up until 3:30 a.m. putting together the most comprehensive, itemized spreadsheet of my life. I documented every single dollar that Madison had spent of my money on her influencer career and luxury lifestyle over the course of our 5-year relationship. I categorized everything meticulously, added detailed notes about the circumstances of each purchase, and even calculated monthly averages and yearly totals to show the clear escalating pattern of spending. When I finally calculated the numbers, they were actually worse than I had remembered or estimated. Designer clothing and accessories that were clearly not joint household purchases, $21,150. This included a Gucci handbag that cost $2,450, Louboutin shoes for $150, a Cartier bracelet that was $3,800, and a Chanel wallet for $950. These were items that she claimed were investments in her brand, but notably, none of which she ever offered to sell or return when we were struggling financially and I was going into debt to support our lifestyle. High-end makeup, skincare products, and professional hair treatments, $12,680. This included monthly facials at $220 each for 38 months, which totaled $8,360. Professional hair coloring every 6 weeks at $280 per session for 20 sessions, which came to $5,600. Premium makeup brands with receipts that explicitly showed for Madison's professional kit on the purchase descriptions. Cash withdrawals from my bank account for various emergencies, $4,650. These were all the times she'd forgotten her wallet, claimed her card wasn't working, promised to pay me back tomorrow, and numerous other scenarios that somehow always resulted in me providing cash that was never repaid. And there were many other categories of expenses that I documented, but won't go into detail about here for the sake of brevity. The grand total was $83,750. I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw the final number. That's literally a down payment on a house in most parts of the country. All of this money had been spent by someone who contributed maybe $16,200 total to our joint household expenses over the entire 5-year period. And these figures I'd calculated were just the expenses I could directly trace to her personal spending or influencer career. They didn't include things like the extra rent I paid when we moved to a more Instagram-worthy apartment, or the premium groceries she insisted on buying for her food content, or the countless small daily expenses that had added up over time. In a particularly petty but deeply satisfying move, I created a separate tab in my spreadsheet that I titled ROI Analysis, where I calculated Madison's actual income from her influencer career versus the total investment I had made in it. Her approximate income from influencing over the 4 years she'd been seriously pursuing it was around $4,950. When I compared that to the investment of nearly $84,000, the return was negative 94%. I included a little note at the bottom that said, "Traditional investment advice suggests cutting losses when an investment consistently underperforms market expectations." I spent the next several hours creating a professional-looking PDF report with all the expenses organized by category, complete with dates, amounts, and detailed descriptions. I even went the extra mile and included screenshots of some of Madison's Instagram posts showing off the expensive items I had paid for. These posts were tagged with captions like "treating myself," "self-investment," and "building my empire," with absolutely zero mention of the fact that they were actually funded entirely by her boyfriend's credit card. The really damning evidence came when I cross-referenced the metadata from her Instagram photos with the exact dates of purchases on my credit card statements. The timestamps matched perfectly. She'd literally been posting about treating herself on the same days that major charges appeared on my accounts. It was a smoking gun that showed the direct connection between my financial sacrifice and her social media image. I carefully drafted an email with the subject line, your request for wedding contribution. The message read, Madison, I've taken the time to review our financial history as requested. According to my comprehensive records, during our 5-year relationship, you incurred $83,550 in personal expenses that were paid from my accounts and credit cards. This figure excludes your share of rent, utilities, and groceries, which you often underpaid or didn't contribute to at all. Since you're now requesting an additional $1,600 for your wedding to Blake, I thought it would be appropriate to settle our existing financial imbalance first. I've attached a detailed breakdown of these expenses for your reference and review. I'm willing to consider your wedding contribution request once this outstanding amount is properly addressed. Given your upcoming nuptials, perhaps Blake would be interested in settling this debt as a show of good faith between all parties involved. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed with repayment arrangements. Regards, Tyler. I attached the comprehensive PDF to the email and hit send. Then I immediately forwarded a copy to my own email address for my records, blocked her phone number, and went to bed with a strange mixture of anxiety and satisfaction churning in my stomach. Part of me felt petty for being so meticulously detailed and calculated in my response. Another part of me felt like a complete idiot for having let things go so far in the first place. How had I been so blind to what was happening for so many years? But mostly, I felt a genuine sense of justice and empowerment. For the first time since Madison had left, I wasn't just passively accepting being used and manipulated. I was standing up for myself with cold, hard facts to back up every single claim. I didn't honestly expect to ever see a penny of that money. I wasn't naive enough to think she'd actually pay me back. But I wanted her to know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that I knew exactly what had happened during our relationship. I wanted her to understand that her narrative about having given me her best years was demonstrably false, according to the financial records. I had been the one giving constantly, financially, emotionally, and in every other way, while she had been taking some more. I slept surprisingly well that night, better than I had in months. I woke up the next morning to discover my phone was blowing up with notifications. There were 3 missed calls from unknown numbers and a bunch of text messages from phone numbers I didn't recognize. It looked like Madison was desperately trying to reach me using her friends' phones since I had blocked her main number. I didn't bother reading all the messages, but the preview snippets that appeared on my lock screen were absolutely golden. How dare you? You're just jealous that, complete psycho, those were our expenses, and other similar gems. I systematically blocked each of those numbers and got ready for work with a genuine smile on my face for the first time in ages. The peace and quiet lasted until about 5:30 p.m. that day, when my phone rang with a Nevada area code. "Is this Tyler?" came a deep, angry male voice on the other end. "Who's this?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. "This is Blake, Madison's fiancé. What the fuck is this bill you sent her?" So he'd seen my documentation. Perfect. "Hello, Blake," I replied calmly. "It's not a bill, actually. It's documentation of Madison's spending patterns during our relationship. She reached out to me asking for $1,600 for your wedding, claiming that I owed her for her time and energy. I simply provided context for why I don't, in fact, owe her anything." "This is complete bullshit," he shouted. "She told me you're making all this up because you're bitter that she left you for me." "I understand that's probably what she told you," I said, maintaining my calm tone. "But every single expense on that list is fully documented with dates and amounts from my actual credit card and bank statements. I can provide the original statements if you'd like to verify anything. Did you know about the Chanel purse, the $950 Louis Vuitton wallet, the weekend spa retreats?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "As her fiancé, I thought you should be aware of her spending habits before you merge your finances," I continued. "I'm just looking out for a fellow man who might be walking into the same situation I found myself in." "You're just trying to fuck up our relationship," he said. But I could hear that his voice had lost some of its initial conviction. "Blake, she contacted me asking for money," I pointed out. "I've moved on completely. I'm in a great relationship now with someone who doesn't see me as a personal ATM. But Madison has a very clear pattern, and I have 5 years of detailed financial records to prove it. That $2,650 she spent at Nordstrom 2 days before leaving me. Was that for her Nevada trip to see you by any chance?" Another long, telling pause. "I need to go," he finally said. "One more thing, Blake," I added before he could hang up. "That Rolex she got you for Christmas last year? You might want to check the credit card statement. I'm pretty sure I paid for that too." He hung up immediately. I hadn't actually known about any Rolex. I was just making an educated guess based on Madison's patterns. But judging by his reaction, I'd hit the bullseye. I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. The next morning, Madison's best friend Chloe started absolutely blowing up my social media accounts with increasingly frantic messages. "You need to delete that email and apologize to Madison right now," she demanded. "She is literally having panic attacks because of you and your lies. That list is full of complete bullshit and you know it. She contributed so much to your relationship that you're just ignoring. Emotional labor is real work, Tyler. You're just bitter because she found a real man who actually supports her dreams instead of criticizing her all the time like you did." I took a screenshot of her messages and sent back a brief professional reply. "Chloe, I have complete documentation for every single expense listed in that report. If Madison disputes any specific item on there, she's welcome to take it up with the credit card companies that have all the original transaction records. As for emotional labor, I wasn't the one who requested financial compensation for our relationship. She did. Then I blocked her too." Next came Madison's mother, Linda. Yes, her mom is actually named Linda. You honestly can't make this stuff up. Her message was even more indignant than Chloe's. "Tyler, I am absolutely disgusted by your behavior. Madison gave you the best years of her life while you did nothing but work and complain about money constantly. A real gentleman would never keep score like this. These were gifts that you chose to give her out of love. You cannot put a price tag on love and partnership. Blake is questioning everything now because of your lies, and Madison is completely devastated. You need to tell him that this was all a misunderstanding and apologize to them both immediately." I didn't even bother responding to Linda's message. I just sent it straight to the block list along with all the others. Things escalated significantly when Jessica called me that evening with some disturbing news. "Hey, so something really weird happened today," she said. "Some woman named Madison messaged me on Instagram claiming to be your ex-girlfriend. She sent me a bunch of screenshots of what she said were your arguments, and she told me that you were financially abusive to her. She said I should run while I can because you're obsessed with her and made up a fake expense report to try to ruin her wedding because you can't move on." My blood was absolutely boiling. Madison had seriously crossed a major line by dragging Jessica into this mess. "Jessica, I am so sorry she contacted you. That's completely crossing every boundary, and it's totally unacceptable. I can show you the original message where she asked me for $16,500 for her wedding, and I can prove that expense report is 100% real. I have all the original credit card statements and receipts." "I figured it was something like that," Jessica said, and I could hear the bullshit detector in her voice working perfectly. Her message had like 20 crying emojis, and she kept calling you toxic and narcissistic, which seemed pretty over the top and desperate. Plus, she went way out of her way to find me and message me on social media. That's not normal behavior from someone who's supposedly moved on and happy. God, I love this woman's ability to see through manipulation. "Do you want me to show you the whole situation?" I asked. "I don't want you to have any doubts about what really happened, and I want to be completely transparent with you. I trust you, Tyler, but yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what she actually sent you," Jessica replied. "This is like some reality TV-level drama." I showed Jessica everything that evening. The original message from Madison demanding wedding money, my comprehensive spreadsheet, and the entire saga that had unfolded. She was absolutely shocked when she saw the total amount. "Holy shit, almost $84,000? On what planet does she think you owe her money after that?" "Planet Narcissist," I replied, and we both started laughing. But despite finding some humor in the absurdity, I was genuinely pissed off. Madison had crossed a serious line by dragging Jessica into this situation, and it was becoming clear that I needed to get more serious about protecting myself from further harassment. The next few days were eerily quiet. Too quiet, actually. Then I started noticing something concerning. There were password reset attempts happening on several of my important accounts. Gmail, Amazon, even my bank account were all showing attempted password resets. Thank God I had two-factor authentication set up on everything, because otherwise she might have actually gained access to my accounts. I immediately changed all my passwords and security questions across every platform I could think of. Then I got an email from my boss that made my blood run cold. "Tyler, I received a concerning email from someone claiming to be your ex-girlfriend. She's making some serious allegations about financial impropriety and unprofessional behavior. I'm not taking it seriously based on your track record here, but I wanted to give you a heads up that someone's trying to cause problems for you. She had actually contacted my workplace trying to get me fired. That was absolutely the last straw. This had gone way beyond petty revenge and into the territory of serious harassment that was threatening my livelihood and my current relationship. I called my lawyer friend Derek, who helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter addressing all of Madison's escalating harassment behaviors. The letter specifically covered the attempted password resets on my personal accounts, her inappropriate contact with my workplace, and the harassment of my girlfriend Jessica. We included a clear statement that any further contact of any kind would result in immediate legal action for harassment and defamation. We sent copies of the cease and desist letter to Madison, Chloe, Linda, and Blake, making sure everyone in her circle understood that the harassment needed to stop immediately. Along with the cease and desist, we also sent a more formal demand letter requesting repayment of $8,200. This represented the most recent and clearly documented expenses from the last 6 months of our relationship, which would be the easiest to prove in court if it came to that. That legal action finally seemed to get through to them. The harassment stopped completely, and my phone finally went quiet. But I heard through a mutual friend that Madison was now telling everyone in her social circle that I was trying to extort her and that I was ruining her special time with false accusations about money that we had supposedly spent together as a couple. About 3 weeks after my cease and desist letter was sent, I got a surprising LinkedIn message from Blake that I definitely wasn't expecting. "Tyler, can we talk off the record?" he asked. I was cautious but genuinely curious about what he might have to say, so we set up a phone call for that evening. "I've been doing some digging since our last conversation," Blake started, and his voice was much less hostile than it had been before. "That thing you mentioned about the Rolex, you were completely right. I found the receipt in her email account, and it shows your credit card information. She had told me it was an investment piece that she'd been saving up for and wanted to surprise me with." "Let me guess," I said, already knowing where this was going. "Yeah, and there's more," he continued, sounding increasingly defeated. "We opened a joint credit card account specifically for wedding expenses, and there are charges on there that don't make any sense for wedding planning. High-end clothing stores, luxury beauty treatments, expensive restaurants. Way more than what she's telling me we're actually spending on wedding preparations." "Let me guess," I said, feeling a sense of déjà vu. "She has perfectly reasonable explanations for all of it." "Exactly," he said, frustration clear in his voice. "It's all for content creation, or networking opportunities, or investing in her brand. Those exact words. And when I question anything or ask for more details, she gets completely hysterical. She says I don't believe in her vision, that I'm being controlling just like you supposedly were. But you weren't actually controlling, were you? You were just asking where all the money was going." "Bingo," I replied, feeling sorry for the guy despite everything. "Look, I'm not trying to break up your relationship," I said. "That's completely your business to figure out. But the pattern is absolutely real, and I have 5 years of financial documentation to prove it." "The wedding's actually on hold right now," Blake confessed, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I suggested we do some couples financial counseling and maybe consider a prenup before we get married." She completely freaked out and said I was betraying her and destroying her trust. "She's staying with her mom right now while we figure things out." Then he dropped another bombshell. "The thing is, I co-signed on a lease for her BMW X6. It's $920 a month, and with our apartment lease, I'm not sure I can afford everything alone if this doesn't work out." I almost felt sorry for Blake, but I had to remind myself that he'd known Madison was in a relationship with me when he started seeing her. What exactly did he think was going to happen? "That's really rough, man," I said, trying to sound sympathetic. "But that's honestly not my problem to solve. If I were you, I'd talk to the car dealership about your options for getting out of that lease. And I'd definitely start checking your credit report regularly to make sure there aren't any surprises." After that phone call, I decided to follow through completely on the demand letter my lawyer had sent. We filed a small claims court case for the $8,200. I knew it probably wouldn't actually get me the money back. Madison clearly didn't have that kind of cash lying around, but it would create a public record of the debt. And maybe, just maybe, it would serve as another reality check for her about the consequences of her actions. 2 months went by relatively peacefully. Jessica and I were getting more and more serious, even talking about moving in together when my current lease was up. I had almost completely forgotten about the Madison drama and was focusing on building something healthy and real with someone who actually valued partnership over financial dependency. Then my phone lit up with a text from Connor. "Dude, you need to check Madison's Instagram right now. Some serious shit is going down. Normally, I wouldn't have bothered looking. I'd worked hard to put that whole chapter behind me, but curiosity got the better of me. I created a burner Instagram account just to take a look at what was happening. What I saw was quite the transformation from her previous content. What had been a carefully curated feed full of luxury vacation photos, designer outfit posts, and engagement photo shoots was now completely different. Her latest post was a teary-eyed selfie with a long, dramatic caption about weathering life's storms and finding out who your real friends are during difficult times. The comments section was full of vague, supportive messages from followers who clearly had no idea what was actually going on. More telling than the posts themselves was what was missing. There was no more BMW X6 in any of her photos. The luxury apartment backdrop had disappeared completely, and there was definitely no more Blake anywhere to be seen in her content. A week later, I got an unexpected email that landed in my inbox like a bombshell. The sender was madison.roberts@gmail.com, and the subject line simply read, "Court date." I opened it with a mixture of curiosity and dread. "Tyler, I just got served papers for a court date about your ridiculous debt claim," the email began. "I don't have money for a lawyer right now because of your vindictive vendetta against me. Blake and I broke up because of you and your lies. You've completely ruined everything I had built for myself. I had to move back in with my mom and sell half my belongings just to get by. My car got repossessed last week. My follower count is dropping every day because I can't create the premium content that people expect anymore. Is this what you wanted? To completely destroy my life? Well, congratulations, you've succeeded. I hope you're happy with yourself. If you drop this stupid court case, I'll consider not filing a countersuit for emotional distress and defamation. Your choice. Madison?" Ah, the sweet, sweet smell of consequences finally catching up with someone. I immediately forwarded the email to my lawyer with a note that it could potentially be considered an attempt at witness intimidation or obstruction. Then, I drafted a short, professional reply. "Madison, I'm sorry to hear about your difficult situation. However, your current financial issues appear to be the direct result of your own spending habits and personal choices, not my documentation of them. The court date will proceed as scheduled. I suggest you prepare accordingly. Tyler." Short, professional, and completely devoid of the deep satisfaction I was feeling inside. The court date finally arrived, and I showed up prepared with every piece of documentation I could possibly need. Madison appeared looking absolutely nothing like her polished Instagram persona. Gone were the designer clothes, the perfect makeup, and the carefully styled hair. Instead, she wore simple, inexpensive clothing, minimal makeup, and her hair was pulled back in a basic ponytail. She looked like a completely different person from the glamorous influencer I had once dated. Madison tried to argue that all the expenses I had documented were gifts given freely out of love, and that I was only pursuing this case because I was being vindictive about our breakup. The judge was clearly not impressed with her argument, especially when I produced the original credit card statement showing every transaction, her text message demanding $1,650 for her wedding, and comprehensive documentation of her harassment campaign against me and my girlfriend. The judgment came down in my favor, $200 plus court costs. As we left the courtroom, Madison approached me one last time. Her mascara was running down her face, and she looked completely defeated. "Are you happy now?" she hissed at me through her tears. "My entire life is completely ruined. I had to get a job as a receptionist." "A receptionist, Tyler? I had 30,000 followers and now I'm answering phones for a living." "You could try paying your own bills for a change," I replied calmly. "It's a novel concept, I know, but most adults manage to figure it out." Fast forward to today, and it's been about 8 months since that court judgment. My life has honestly never been better than it is right now. Jessica and I moved in together about 3 months ago into a beautiful apartment that we both contribute to equally. She absolutely insists on splitting everything 50-50 down the middle, and she gets genuinely upset if I try to pay for too much of anything. "We're partners, Tyler, not a charity case and a donor," she said firmly when I offered to cover the entire security deposit for our new place. I'm not exaggerating when I say I almost started crying right there on the spot. The contrast between her attitude and Madison's couldn't be more stark. My finances have completely recovered from the Madison disaster. My credit score is back in the excellent range where it belongs. My emergency fund is fully restored and growing every month. I'm even actively saving money for an engagement ring, because Jessica is absolutely the real deal. Someone who builds you up instead of bleeding you dry, someone whose dreams and goals don't require bankrupting their partner, Someone who genuinely sees love as partnership rather than a business transaction. I heard through the grapevine that Madison did eventually manage to get that receptionist job she mentioned, working at a dental office somewhere in Las Vegas. Her Instagram following has dropped to around 8,000 followers, mostly bots, and people who simply forgot to unfollow her account. There's no more luxury lifestyle content, no more brand partnerships, and no more sponsored posts. Just occasional selfies with captions about new beginnings and finding herself, and other generic inspirational nonsense. As for Blake, I heard he apparently dodged a major financial bullet. Last I heard through mutual connections, he was dating a nurse from his hometown, someone with her own established career and her own savings account who doesn't need someone else to fund her lifestyle dreams. The whole experience taught me some incredibly valuable lessons that I wish I had learned much earlier in life, but as they say, better late than never. These are lessons that have fundamentally changed how I approach relationships and money management. First, and most importantly, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Madison showed me she was financially irresponsible and entitled from day one of our relationship, but I made endless excuses for her behavior because she was beautiful, charming, and I was completely infatuated. I told myself that love meant overlooking these flaws and that supporting someone meant funding their delusions and unrealistic dreams. Real love doesn't mean bankrupting yourself for someone else's Instagram lifestyle. It means supporting each other's realistic, achievable goals while maintaining financial boundaries and mutual respect. Second, always keep meticulous track of your money, even when it seems boring and unromantic. I know tracking every expense down to the penny might seem obsessive or unromantic to some people, but financial transparency is absolutely crucial in any serious relationship. If your partner gets defensive, angry, or emotional every time you try to have a conversation about money, that's a red flag the size of Texas waving right in your face. A real partner who genuinely cares about your shared future wants to build wealth together, not spend yours while calling it an investment in their personal brand. Third, don't ignore your gut feelings, especially about financial matters. I had dozens of moments throughout my relationship with Madison where I knew something was fundamentally wrong. I'd lie awake at 3:30 a.m. calculating debt, feeling physically sick when I checked credit card balances, wondering why I was working 55-hour weeks while she was getting weekly facials and spa treatments. But I consistently pushed those feelings down because I thought that's what love meant, sacrificing yourself completely for someone else's happiness and dreams. Real, healthy love doesn't require you to go broke or compromise your financial security. It's built on mutual respect and shared responsibility. Fourth, the phrase, "fake it till you make it," is really just permission to live way beyond your means using other people's money. Madison faked it for 4 solid years and never came anywhere close to making it because her entire strategy was based on spending other people's money to create the appearance of success while contributing absolutely nothing of real value to anyone. Authentic, lasting success comes from developing genuine skills, providing real value to others, and building something sustainable, not from owning expensive handbags and posting photos of luxury experiences you can't actually afford. Fifth, influencer culture is mostly an elaborate scam that preys on people's insecurities and unrealistic expectations. For every single person actually making real money from social media, there are literally thousands of people burning through their savings accounts or their partner's savings accounts while chasing an impossible dream. The influencers who are actually making substantial money either started with significant family wealth, have legitimate businesses operating behind the scenes, or got incredibly lucky during the early days of social media. They're not just posting pictures of expensive stuff they bought with credit cards and calling it entrepreneurship. Most importantly, I learned that genuine self-respect is worth more than any relationship, no matter how attractive or charming the other person might be. I spent 5 years functioning essentially as a human ATM, thinking that financial generosity was somehow equivalent to love, and that supporting someone meant never questioning where the money was going. But real love is reciprocal and balanced. It's 2 people actively building each other up and contributing to shared goals, not one person funding the other's lifestyle while getting nothing but mounting debt in return. Looking back now, I'm almost grateful that the whole Madison situation happened, as painful and expensive as it was at the time. The experience made me into the person I am today. Someone who knows his own worth, someone who can recognize red flags before they become major problems, someone who found Jessica and can truly appreciate what a healthy, balanced partnership looks like. Jessica appreciates genuine partnership and mutual respect over financial parasitism and one-sided dependence. The $83,150 that Madison spent over the course of our relationship was definitely expensive tuition for what amounted to a masterclass in recognizing and escaping financial abuse. But honestly, the education was worth every penny because it led me to where I am now. In a relationship with someone who adds real value to my life instead of just constantly taking from it without giving anything meaningful back. And yeah, I still have that comprehensive spreadsheet saved on my computer and backed up in multiple locations. I keep it not because I'm bitter or dwelling on the past, but because I'm genuinely proud of it. Proud that I finally stood up for myself after years of being taken advantage of. Proud that I meticulously documented the truth instead of just accepting someone else's gaslighting and manipulation. Proud that I didn't let Madison rewrite history and cast me as the villain in her carefully crafted victim narrative. Sometimes people ask me if I regret sending that detailed email with the expense breakdown, or taking her to small claims court, or being so thorough in documenting everything. The answer is absolutely not for a single second. She was the one who reached out to me asking for money while claiming that I owed her for the privilege of having dated her. I simply showed her who actually owed whom, backed up with 5 years of financial records that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Madison wanted to play the victim and rewrite our relationship history to make herself look like the wronged party. I provided the receipts, literally, that proved otherwise. When someone tries to gaslight you and manipulate the narrative, sometimes the only way to protect yourself is with cold, hard, indisputable facts. The whole experience taught me that some people genuinely view romantic relationships as opportunities for financial gain, rather than emotional connection and partnership. They're incredibly skilled at emotional manipulation, making you feel guilty for wanting basic accountability or financial transparency. They'll call you controlling, unsupportive, cheap, or jealous when you ask reasonable questions about where money is going or express concern about mounting expenses. But a real partner, someone who genuinely cares about you and your shared future, welcomes financial transparency because they're not hiding anything shady or irresponsible. The best revenge isn't sending carefully crafted spreadsheets or winning court cases, though I have to admit those felt pretty damn good at the time. The best revenge is living well, building a healthy relationship with someone who actually values you as a person, and learning to never accept less than you deserve from anyone ever again. So if you're reading this and you recognize yourself in a similar situation, where you're funding someone else's dreams and lifestyle while your own financial security crumbles around you, please learn from my expensive mistakes. Love shouldn't cost you your future financial stability. Anyone who truly loves you wouldn't ask you to sacrifice your emergency fund, max out your credit cards, or go into debt for their Instagram content or unrealistic career aspirations. Set clear boundaries, track your expenses religiously, trust your instincts when something feels wrong, and remember that saying no to financial manipulation isn't being mean or unsupportive. It's being smart and protecting yourself. You deserve a genuine partner who contributes to the relationship, not a financial dependent who sees you as a source of funding for their lifestyle fantasies. Your bank account, your credit score, and your future self will thank you for knowing the difference. Madison, if you're somehow reading this story, I genuinely hope you've learned to pay your own bills and found some actual marketable skills to monetize instead of just looking pretty while spending other people's money on luxury items you can't afford. But honestly, your financial responsibility and personal growth aren't my problem anymore. I'm too busy building a real sustainable future with someone who actually contributes to it rather than just taking from it. Peace out, everyone. Tyler signing off from his completely debt-free life with a woman who insists on paying for her own coffee and splitting every dinner bill down the middle. Life is good when you're with someone who understands what partnership actually means.